enough.
That's a clock. It's a train clock. And the train's coming in. Here, you'll hear the whistle. That must be on the hour, yes.
2 o'clock.
Yeah.
Hey, it's time we're supposed to start.
Yeah.
And the train is coming.
Yeah.
Okay, Calvin Castine here, and we are in York Harbor, Maine. It took us about 4 hours after we gassed up in Alberg, Vermont to get here. And this is the story we've been trying to do for about 5 years. I believe it was 5 years ago. It may have been 6, but I think it's 5 years. Back in, I believe, '98, I went to the discount bookstore. Sorry, Ozzie, it was a discount bookstore, so it cuts into your profits, I imagine. At the Miramar Shopping Center in Champlain, and I picked up a copy of Legends of the Field, Classic Sports Photography of Ozzie Sweet. And with Mickey Mantle on the cover, it certainly got my attention. So, you can't judge a book by its cover, as you may know, so I thumbed through it and saw all these great old pictures. I said, I got to have that. And in particular, if Caleb will hold up that shot with the Sport magazine covers, the thing that sold it to me was when I came across this page with the photographer in front of the covers that I kind of grew up with back in the 1950s. So I bought the book, knowing I was going to be in for a treat with all the photos. Looked at all the pictures, then got around to reading it. And okay, and I need to point out here, we've got Judy Castine on the camera, so we just had to stop to make sure everything was coming out all right. And our prop man is my son Caleb, who's one of the reasons we were able to come here today, because he's got a basketball tournament in Portland. Well, when I bought the book, got it home, looked at all those pictures, and got to go around to reading it, I found out that the photographer was a neighbor. Grew up right there in Elizabethtown, New York, actually in New Russia, which is in the town of, and went on to become one of the great photographers in the United States, certainly one of the preeminent sports photographers, but somebody who took a lot more than just sports photos over the years. And is it safe to say that despite your national and world acclaim, Ozzie Sweet, that you're probably relatively unknown in your hometown?
My hometown, I don't think they know of me there. Right at all. In New Russia, no, I don't know. A few, I think, do, but not many. There's one time I thought I wanted to be a sculptor, and I spent a whole summer vacation when I was still in school up on scaffolding, chiseling an Indian profile into a cliff, and I made sure it was close enough to the roads that everybody could see it. It wasn't off somewhere. But that, of course, is still there. It'll be there.
And is it visible from, was it 9N? What 9? Which one?
9, right. Famous Route 9, which was the bootleggers route back in Prohibition days. Mm-hmm. And our farm was right on that route. And, of course, I go back to Prohibition days, the very tail end of it. And all the farmers, made hard cider, and some of them even made home brew and that sort of thing. So they weren't really disappointed when there's no longer any prohibition. But they used to come, they'd have hiding places. I had a lot of different ways of getting the booze through there. And Route 9 at that time was the only way. That was the only way from New York to Montreal. And they had, sometimes they'd have reinforced springs and have a regular sedan, and there'd be a husband and wife, and look just like a family, with this extra support. It wouldn't weigh it down.
Right.
But then most of them would just use what we call the big black Mariahs. They were big touring cars. There were Packards and Cadillacs and so on. They'd load them up with booze, throw a tarp over the back, and they'd have a hiding place. They'd have scouts watching for the state troopers or the sheriff. And when they thought they might have clear sailing from one hiding place to the other, they'd make a mad dash. And it was a mad dash, wide open. Us kids could hear them coming. So we'd run out to the road. And, of course, as they went by, we'd wave, and the bootlegger driving with a flap, roaring past. It was a great thrill, to have. He was like a racing driver to us. and it was such fun. There was one farm, I won't mention which family it was, but there was one farm family, and they had four sons. Three sons were still working on the farm. It was quite the biggest dairy farm there. But one of them was a bootlegger. And just like in the old-time movies, about once a year he'd come back home and visit, and he'd have a beautiful automobile, and he'd have, a number of times he had a very pretty girl with all the furs and all, you know. And of course the word would get out, and all the neighbors would go up to see him. He was a great hero, you know. It was really fun. But a lot of that was Route 9 then, and of course there was quite a bit of tourism too. But the New York Thruway, of course, has changed all that. And New Russia's a really quiet little place. And Elizabethtown, of course, being the county seat, is a little more active, I guess. But that's, you know, then after went to the Little Red Schoolhouse there. Our farm was the only, within sight of the school. And the teachers were always from out of town, out of state.
Now, was the school in New Russia?
Yes, in New Russia.
Okay.
It was a little bit, about 4 miles out of New Russia. But right on Route 9, though. In fact, the building's still there, and someone converted it into a nice residence, but they left the actual schoolroom area the same.
That's good.
Yeah, it was just nice. But no, we used to. I started to say. So we were the closest. So the school teacher would always board with us, and it was $7 a week, $1 a day for room and board. But at night she'd help dry dishes, things like that. And of course she was right there, so if I needed any help there, the school teacher was right under the same roof, which worked out very, very nice. But I'll never forget one teacher came. Of course, some of the older the boys that were older, there were so many interruptions. That was before electricity, and they had to cut wood because there was no refrigeration, cut ice and harvest their own ice. All the farmers would help one another cut and deliver and pack the ice in each one of the farms. And then they used to have to cut their own wood and plow and then harvest and all that. So each of those older boys, they'd only get about a half a year in school because they have so many interruptions. And of course the school, what do they call them? I've forgotten what. But anyway, that would check on anybody that was. They never paid any attention to those guys.
Schoolmaster or whatever they were.
Yeah. Well, not warrant officer, but it'll come to me. But they did. Some of them got pretty old before they got out, before they got through all 8 grades. And there were a couple I remember they were real scallywags. They had been there going to school for seems like forever.
So the truant officer was busy with them.
Right, but one time that was back in the days. It's not popular now, but in those days, Limburger cheese was very popular. It really was. You don't never even hear of it now.
No.
My dad called it a two-handed cheese. One hold your nose and eat it with the other. And so what those rascals did one time before she came to school is they rubbed Limburger cheese all over her pencils and rulers. And my dad got word of that, and he raised holy hell. He thought that was awful. Because she was her first teaching job out of school, and she was young and all, you know.
And that's how they initiated her.
Yeah.
But for the younger viewers who probably never heard of Limburger cheese,
That's right, yeah.
that used to be, when you talk about something stinky, that's the reference you would use was Limburger cheese.
Yeah, right. And then 2 other things that I remember were popular and never hear of much, and it was a real delicacy, was tripe, you know what that is, and then pickled pig's feet. How many people like pickled pig's feet?
I know one.
Do you like it?
I'm not, but I know some people.
Yeah, and some of those things. Oh, another thing, we all did our own butchering, all the farmers, because we had pigs, you know, and everything, and they saved the blood and make blood pudding. Mm-hmm. Nothing was wasted. The pig's feet and the blood, everything.
Cheese and
everything. You know?
Yeah. Well, there's a butcher shop up in Hemingford, Quebec, which is just north of the border over Moors, and they still sell you the blood pudding and head cheese and all those things that and they have a steady market for it.
Oh, sure. Well, you know, in a farm, you get chores very early in life, And of course, I was doing chores as early as 6 and 7, but it would be like feed the chickens and collect the eggs,
Right.
see that the barn cats got milk at milking time and that sort of thing. But one of the first jobs that I had in the field that I hated, other things didn't bother me that much, helping with the haying, driving the horses, because it wasn't tractors, it was horses, driving the horses through the field while I, loaded the wagon. But the job that I hated, we raised a lot of potatoes, and we'd have bins of potatoes, in the basement, and bins of carrots, and bins of cabbage, and shelves of canned goods. But the potatoes, those long rows that went on forever, there was no insecticides. So my first job that I hated, was to walk along those long rows with a can of kerosene, picking individual potato bugs off the leaves and throwing them. Oh, God.
One at a time, huh?
Yeah, it was awful.
And of course, it's like going back to your old classroom that you were in second grade and finding out it's not really that huge.
Oh, yeah.
That row of potatoes may have been long, but not quite as long as it looks when you're just a little tyke.
That's right. Yeah, there were so many rows, and they were so long. But and then there were little things. All the farms had asparagus beds and rhubarb beds. All the farms, get them established. And of course, if you don't use asparagus, it grows up to seed right away. You have to keep cutting it back. And it was a big bed, and so we used to eat a lot of asparagus. But it was my job to be sure that it was cut back enough so it wouldn't go to seed. And I got into trouble one time there because I wasn't paying attention, and it went to seed. So those are little.
And then the season's over. Once it goes
That's
to seed,
it.
the
That's
season's
it.
over.
That's all right. And of course, rhubarb. My God, that the lady folks would make rhubarb sauce and all, but it had needed more sugar than anything.
Yeah,
So sour.
There's nothing like grabbing a stalk of rhubarb and just chomping it raw.
Right. Yeah.
Now, as a kid, you never mistake the burdocks for rhubarb and grabbed one of those, did you?
No, no, that's right. Oh yeah, the old homestead is still there. The barn is gone, but the old homestead is still there, right on route. I was right up pretty close, and
Now, we're planning on, Ozzie's going to, as we're taping this on D-Day, June 6th, 2003, Ozzie's planning coming up in about a month, and we're planning on, hopefully, if the weather is good, the weather's going to cooperate, we're going to come around and look at some of these sites. But whereabouts is the homestead? Is right there, is it on Route 9?
it's right on Route 9, yeah, and it's exactly 6 miles from Elizabethtown. Because I had to go into Elizabethtown to get a haircut. And I rode my bicycle. My folks always wanted my hair neat, so I had to go ride the bike in 12 miles round trip to get a haircut. And I know the route real well. But I didn't mind it so much because that particular was right in E-Town. That particular barbershop had 3 chairs, and then beyond were a couple of pool tables. So if I had to wait, I could play pool. So I didn't.
So you didn't argue when it was time to get your hair cut?
No, it was sort of an adventure. There was one fellow that sat out in front of his gas station, and he was always sitting out there in an old beat-up chair. And everybody called me Sonny, everybody. And I'd ride by, and I knew what was going to happen. And he'd shout, Sonny, and I'd step off my bike. Yeah. He said, Sonny, come here. So I'd go back. I knew what was going to happen. I'd get back to him, and he'd say, Sonny, do you know your back wheel was going around? He thought, and then he'd laugh his head off each time. But that's why I think I did it, because I didn't want to deprive him of that big laugh.
You thought he was really getting one on you, huh?
Right. Oh, yeah, that was funny.
Now, you weren't born Ozzie Sweet, though, were you? That's what I read.
No.
Tell us a little bit about that.
Well, it's really Oscar. And that was kind of tough.
But it wasn't Sweet either, was it?
No, I was born Corbo, C-O-R-B-O, in Stamford, Connecticut. And then my mother decided that wouldn't work. My dad, God bless him, he's a good guy. My real dad, he was a gambler. And he'd lost a lot of money and got pretty tiresome. So there was a change made. And my stepdad, Hardy Sweet, in fact, there's a picture here you might like to see of us. He he had the farm up there, and by golly, but he was down in Stamford because he was a good friend of my mother's brother who was killed in Chattaterry. And his name was Oscar Cowan, Oscar H. Cowan. In fact, the American Legion Post in Stamford is named after him.
Oh.
It's the Oscar H. Cowan Post. And because he was killed at Chattaterry about 2 weeks before I was born, at the end of the First World War, my mother, they didn't tell her because they knew I was on the way, and they didn't.
Yeah.
And of course, my father knew, and she said, "Would it be all right if you know, they were always named after the dad? I was going to have his name, and if it would be all right if she didn't know he had been killed, if I could have a middle name, one of his names, because he was the only brother." All the others, and of course, he said, by all means, he said, if you'd like to, you can give him both your brother's first and that's how I got the name Oscar Cowan Sweet. Only it was Oscar Cowan Corbo in the records in the town hall in Stamford, Connecticut. You'd look it up in the birth certificate, show Oscar Cowan Corbo. But he legally adopted me. Judge Brewster, you ever hear of famous Judge Brewster?
I'm sure a lot of people listening, watching in Elizabethtown or Essex County will have heard of him.
Yeah, he was quite a famous judge. And he was a lawyer at that time, and he had the papers. He legally adopted me. However, after you live with a family a certain length of time, I think you legally become a member of the family anyway.
But you needed to change your name to make it a little more proper.
That's right.
Now, so is your legal name now Ozzie, or did you?
Oh no,
still Oscar?
It's still Oscar. That's the nickname. It started when I was going to high school in Stamford, Connecticut. I went my last year of high school in Stamford, Connecticut, and that started then, because I was very active in the football team and so on. And I don't know how it got started, and so I liked it. But you see, if you stop and think about it a little bit, not up there, they wouldn't pick on you, but when you get down into a city area and so on, Sweet is a name that's going to have the kids picking on you, right?
Yeah.
And put Oscar in front of that. And boy, that was a tough name to live with. And I had to learn to use my dukes early just to protect that name. In those days, that was a sissy name.
Yeah.
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 But that with Ozzie just came along, and I kept it, and then it became my professional name too. But a lot of legal things. It's still Oscar. But
Now, so you ended up, I didn't know you went back to Connecticut to graduate, but you were telling me off camera that you played on the basketball team at Elizabethtown, and
yes, oh yeah, right up. And they thought that it'd be good. My mother thought it would be a good idea if I had my last year in a city. And of course, Stamford, Connecticut was where I was born, and I had a lot of relatives there. And I stayed with my mother's youngest sister, my Aunt Marie, and to go to that school that last year. And it did. I was very active in the public speaking club at that school, and I was a member of the dramatic club and was in the plays and involved with sports.
so it gave you some opportunities that you
Yeah,
probably wouldn't have gotten.
yeah.
What was your,
And I wrote a column for the school paper called Girls in General, and I really had a good time with that. and the last
a lot
column,
of research involved.
yeah, right. The last column, when I graduated, it was going to appear, and they made a big thing of it, was teachers in general, and I had a lot of fun writing that too. So that last year in a bigger city was good, because you see everybody and all the seniors I knew and played basketball with and all that all graduated. It was kind of, it was a little. I needed more going on,
How big a class would the typical graduation class have been back in E-Town?
E-Town?
And that's probably about 36, 37, somewhere in there?
Oh, not that many, no.
No, I mean the year.
Oh.
What year did you graduate?
Oh, in Stanford. Oh, my God, that was over 100.
No, what year did you graduate?
Oh, 37.
37,
Yeah.
So from 36 to 37 was your graduation year. So probably maybe 8 or 9 if you're lucky, and maybe 1 or 2 of them boys.
Yeah,
in
yeah,
Newtown?
yeah. It's been pretty small. Yeah, in a way, at that age, I guess in a way, I might have kind of outgrown. And so many of my friends that were a little older weren't there anymore, you know.
Now, who are some of the, you said they had a championship basketball team.
Oh, yeah, well.
Who are some of the players on that?
Well, one of them that I remember so well, and I think he's still there. It might even be fun when we get together on this to see if he's there. You might like to talk with him.
Sure.
Ben Hooper. Now, he was a short fellow. He wasn't tall. I don't think Ben was more than 5'8", maybe 5'9". But my God, what a basketball player he was. He was really something. He was one of the top stars in that whole area. You know, fast, and he was almost like the Globetrotters. You know, he could dribble behind his back and do all kinds of tricky things. And of course, the crowd loved that, you know.
And this was before Bob Cousy.
Yeah, right.
There weren't too many people doing this.
That's right, that's right. Oh, he was something. Yeah, I'll bet anything. I talked to him one time. I called him, Ben, about 4 or 5 years. He was about my age. I think he'd still be around. Of course, you know, when you get into my age, all my friends are gone. But, you know, the old friends are really good friends. And the thing about it that's interesting and frightening, too, is that every one of the old buddies, some, you know, that I knew way back in school days and so on, and have kept in touch with, very soon after they retired, what happened? Died. So I don't dare retire.
You're not gonna... Well, this has been one of the problems in trying to get together with Ozzie, is the fact that, you moved here to York Harbor, what, 3-4 years ago, maybe?
3 years ago.
About 3 years ago. Originally, when I found his name in here, I said, well, I'm going to try to see if I can locate this guy. This book doesn't look like it's been out that long. Chances are he's still around. So I was able to locate Ozzie Sweet in a phone directory down in, was it Francistown, New Hampshire?
Francistown, right.
And called him up out of the blue and told him what we wanted to do. But he's on the go all the time. In fact, I think the summer I called you was probably one of the last times you'd come up to do that antique gas engine show, which was in Westport at the time. Now it's at the Clinton County Fairgrounds. But in fact, you had just been up there, and my wife and I had been there too. But we didn't know, we didn't come across each other. I didn't start looking for you until after we had taped that segment.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, that's...
But you are still a full-time photographer. He's given me a sample of some of the calendars that...
We're working on 3 books, too, and there's other projects in the works. Yeah. Diane says it's too much. You know, she says you should... But what the heck, so much of the work involves travel, and she comes with... She has her own business, importing business, and her office is right there, so I can't get away with anything. She can hear everything.
When you get your models in here, you got to behave.
That's right, right.
Of course, most of his models are kittens and puppies now.
That's right, yeah. Yeah, we use models on the automobile things, but not on the truck and tractor calendars. And that makes a lot of difference, too. In the auto things, when you don't have to, you know, you have to find the car and get permission, and it has to be the right car, the right year, and the right color. Can't have all red cars or all...
No, not every month.
That's right. You've got to have interesting different settings. But it's a simple compared to when you have models, and you have to have the girl and the wardrobe that works, and she has to find the time, because I don't use professional models, just good-looking people that are around. And so that's the one arrangement I have with Diane, that any other automobile things that I do, it'll be what we call portraits, just the cars without models, because the difference it's a lot more work.
Yes.
Yeah.
Dress the model, get proper
just-
attire, and
They have to find where their hair can fix their hair so it'll fit the vintage of the car, and wardrobe, and you know it adds another 50% to the work. You know.
yeah. Well, one of the vehicles we're going to have to get you to probably look at when you're up there this summer is a recently restored 1915 loggia that Dr. Tony Vaccaro owns, and it's just barely been finished, fully restored. It's been in the process for the last couple of years, and he spent a lot of money getting it restored, just finding it. And of course, loggia, as you may or may not know, the plant originated there in Plattsburgh, where the Georgia Pacific Mill is now. So, although this 1915 was made in the Detroit area, it's still got its roots. The parts are all made in Plattsburgh, and it's just a great car to bring back to the North Country.
Yeah, that's interesting.
Yeah. Now, we'll look at some of the car photos that, and I'm sure a lot of people viewing this have seen his car photos and didn't realize it. Cale, would you give me the one with Ozzie and the two elderly ladies, the photo, and just hold that one up for us? Now, this is an early photo. How old would you be in this picture, Ozzie? Back it up a little bit, Cale.
Yeah, what do I look, about 3 to 4 there?
Now, who are the ladies?
And that's my two grandmothers.
Oh, both sides?
Both sides, yeah. That's Grandma Sweet on the right. Yeah, no, I couldn't have, I must have been about 2.
Oh, I don't know. You look older than that. Look,
3 maybe?
I'd say 3, 4, yeah.
Yeah, 3. I wasn't any older than 4.
Yeah.
Yeah, I like that hat, though. I wish I had one like that now.
You should have kept it.
But that's Grandma Sweet, and that's Grandma Cowan. That was my mother's mother.
Yeah.
And this is the house. The barns were over here.
And that's in Elizabethtown. Okay, Grandma
no,
Sweet's
New Russia.
Yeah, okay. Grandma Sweet's on the right in the lighter dress,
Yes,
and
yeah.
Grandma Cowan on the
Yeah,
left.
on the right, yeah, my two grandmas. And then if you could see over here, there's a porch over here. Then if you looked down the road, Route 9, you could see the schoolhouse
Ah.
right down that way.
Well, my father was a similar situation. In fact, that's the house I live in right now. It's actually a corner lot that came off our property is where his one-room schoolhouse was. So he didn't have too far to go.
That's right, yeah.
You couldn't say he missed the bus.
That's right. Oh, yeah, being able to just walk, and the janitor was one of the older students. And of course, in the wintertime, great big chunk stove. I took big chunks like that. He'd have to get in there because he couldn't keep the fire going all night. So he'd have to get in there and get it going enough to heat the place up. Well, you know how it'd get pretty chilly in the middle of the winter in the Adirondacks. And he'd have to get it going so it'd get kind of red and it'd peel the varnish off the desks on either side, you know. But they didn't have any water. There was the Bouquet River that ran down, but it was frozen over. And so he'd just come over with a pail to fill the tank, the glass business, you know. And
A reservoir on it.
yeah, and he'd come with a pail and get water, and we liked it. His name was Gilbert Denton. Gilbert, last I knew, was still alive too. He's 2 or 3 years older than I am.
There's a lot of Dentons around
Gangs
that
of
area.
That sure is. But we liked his visits because somehow Gilbert always knew the latest news. He always had the latest gossip and news. So while we were waiting, to fill his pail, we'd ask what's going on, and he'd have some choice tidbit to tell us.
Now, I've heard that in many cases, people's school tax back then might be to provide so many cords of wood or whatever for the school. There's different ways that people could actually pay their school tax to operate that school.
Yeah, oh yeah. That was one, and having all 8 grades in one room, there were never more than a couple of dozen children at the most. Sometimes usually it was even a little bit less. But I remember listening to the teacher and the grades ahead and picking up a little information that I remember to help, ahead of advance.
So next year you've already heard some of
That's right. Oh, and then the other thing that I used to love is we used to have what they called recess. And we'd go out, of course, we'd play like crazy, 2 big meadows on either side. Those meadows were still there, just like it was. And the thing that we'd do, we'd have recess, and we'd play like heck, of course, come in kind of, if it was warm, it'd be a little sweaty and so on. So so we could have time to calm down, the teacher used to read for about 15, 20 minutes, half hour, from one of the children's classics, read aloud to us. When we said, oh gosh, did I love that. And most of the kids do. You know, it would be the Arabian Nights, King Arthur, the Deer Slayer, all the classics. And then, of course, I used to, a little later, I read the Tom Swift series. I'll have to show you. I have all the Tom Swift books. Yeah. That's one of my hobbies, collecting books, you know. And I even pick up one of the Tom Swift, you know, and he got into did so many things when it was with his chums. His friends were his chums. And they were so, the writer, someone named Appleton, I think, they were always so polite, you know, always sir. And they always never did anything wrong, never got into any mischief. And that was all good training. And of course, they weren't the greatest writers in the world. You know all those series. There was the Cowboy series and the they're all there. I've got bunches of other ones too. But the thing is that we read them, but it was practice. It got us to read, and that's how we learned to read.
Yeah, you got your imagination going too.
Yeah.
Now, you were always destined to be an entrepreneur. We have a picture of you here with a big, you talked about that other hat. This is with a great big hat. And you're probably 7 or 8 years old and
That was my first business.
sitting down there.
Yeah.
I think let me see, I think that's the one. Yeah, that's the one. Sitting there with your hand on your chin, looking like you're posing for a picture.
Well, yeah, I was. It was taken with a little folding Kodak, or no, that was taken with a little box camera. I'll show you what type of camera.
So whoever took that picture, that was a pretty good picture there.
Yeah.
You must,
I'd cut my thumb. You'll notice there's a big bandage on my thumb, and the scar is still there from that. It's on the left thumb. Well, now the thing is that my mother raised a lot of flowers, nasturtiums, bachelor's buttons, cosmos, and so on. And I used to help her with weeding and all. And one year in the spring, I got the idea of the summer people would come up, and we had a lot of summer people, you know. And then, of course, there was no such thing as a florist shop or anything of that nature, and none of them were there. They might have a few rose bushes, but they're never up there enough to get things planted and everything. So there were no flowers. And so I got the idea that if I raised flowers and made bouquets and went around, I bet I'd sell them. Well, my gosh, it turned into, but I really did very well. What I'd do, I asked my mother if she'd help me finance me buy the extra seeds, and then I'd reimburse her, which I did. And we lengthened the garden, and of course those were the 3 flowers, the nasturtiums, cosmos, and bachelor's buttons. And I'd make 5-cent bouquets, 10-cent bouquets, 15-cent bouquets, and 25-cent bouquets. And on my bicycle, I had one of those big wire baskets that are crisscrossed like that. And on the back, there was a place like that. I'd wrap them with damp paper and rubber bands and put them in there. I'll never forget there was one big place, and the family was chauffeur-driven. Everything was way up on a hill. What the heck was the name of that? I can't remember the name. Windy Cliff, I think it was. Anyway, the lady of the house was delighted that there was a flower boy. You know? And she'd almost always buy about half of everything.
Wow.
And then there was one little lady, I remember her name, Mrs. Becker, and she'd always give me cookies. She'd buy one of the 10-cent bouquets usually. She's the one that said, Sonny, the 5-cent, don't bother with the 5-cent bouquets, just start with the 10-cent bouquets. So I never had any more 5-cent bouquets. But I'll never forget, and sometimes there was a lady with they had, you know, the cooks and all that, a lot of domestic help. They would, sometimes with the 25-cent bouquet, she'd give me 50 cents too. That would help.
A big dipper, yeah.
Oh, yeah. One time they were having some friends coming up to stay over there from the city, New York or somewhere, and said, we have friends and I'd like quite a bit more. Well, that particular week, I made 3 trips with my bicycle loaded with flowers. That particular trip, I made over $30.
Holy cow.
Just with that one customer.
Now, you were how old roughly?
About 11, whatever, yeah.
So
10
this
or
was
10 or 11.
It's around 1930. This is Depression era.
Oh, yeah, that was a lot of money. Well, my dad said that he had a machine shop in Elizabethtown, so we had some income besides the farm. And he said that Sonny's making more money than I am now. But then I'd make 2 trips a week, but that was the big thing. So that was the first time I was ever in business myself.
You started very young. Now, did you get some wildflowers in there once in a while, or is it all homegrown?
Oh, it was all homegrown because by that time there wasn't much. See the wild violets and jack in the pulpits and some of those flowers. They were earlier in the spring, so they were gone.
Okay. Now we're going to move ahead a little bit. You graduated in Connecticut, Stanford.
Mm-hmm.
Did you move back to New Russia after graduation, or did you?
No, then I went to school out in California. Pardon me, I worked for 1 year, drove for a nice man that they summered in New Russia at a summer place. And one summer, I drove their car for them. Everything that was, I was again my junior year, sophomore year at high school in Elizabethtown, and I just helped them in all kinds of ways. Well, this old fellow was retired. He'd been an architect, and he and his brother had put the roof on the Empire State Building, that sort of thing. And he said, I was out of high school. Would I like to drive him to Florida? He didn't need companions because he had friends down there, but just drive him. And for about 6 weeks or 2 months. And I was no rush to go on to school. So that first winter I went to Florida and was his companion and got to know some pretty girls and have a good time.
Yeah.
But
that name companion has changed over the years.
right.
But back then,
Well, it isn't as though I had to fix meals. I was really just drive her and go places, take him on errands, because he had friends that he played cards with and everything.
Mm-hmm.
And then I went west, young man, and went to Art Center. That's why Art Center is a well-known school in Los Angeles, and graduated from Art Center. And then I worked in films for a while.
Now, we've got you a picture of the cowboy here.
Yeah.
Now, I did read in this book here that you were an extra in some of the Hopalong Cassidy movies. Is that right?
Yeah.
Tell us about that.
Yeah. Well, I worked in westerns a number of times. I was a Nazi officer in one thing with French tone. But I worked.
You remember the name of it?
I don't know.
Okay.
I think I have a picture around here though of me with French. I could show that to you, send it to you. But and then I worked with John Wayne in Reap the Wild Wind. That was a Cecil B. DeMille film. But main thing was drive-in restaurants had just started, and they started in California. And I had a job as a car hop. There were both girls and boy car hops. We wore nice uniforms and all. And this particular drive-in was right out on the Sunset Strip, and all kinds of great people would come in there, And that's I'd go to school, and then I'd go and work the night shift right up at the theater group and everything. So I'd work till almost midnight, and then I'd study for a couple of hours. That was tough because I was paying my own tuition and room and board and everything, but I got through. And then I worked for a while in the films and kept pretty busy. Jack Pomeroy was my agent, and he was Bon DiCarlo's agent. In fact, Bon DiCarlo and I were engaged for a while.
Oh,
That's
wow.
an actress, yeah. And then Uncle Sam invited me to come into the service. I didn't offer, but I was drafted.
Uncle Sam wants you.
Yeah, right. But I was stationed in Camp Callan. I have a thing here about that. And I went through basic training in anti-aircraft. And just as well, a little bit before that, I did a thing of I don't know, I think I have some pictures of it. But anyway, it was shipping out. It was just showed the soldier and the pretty girl and the dog looking up so sad. Did you ever see that picture? It was on the cover of a best. I took that 60 years ago, and it was called Shipping Out. And then it was just used on Brokaw's best-selling book as the jacket.
Really? On the jacket?
Same picture.
Wow.
Yeah, all those.
And that's your photography. That's your
Yeah,
photo.
yeah. And because of that picture, of course, when you finish basic training, you get shipped out. It was a replacement training center. But because of that picture, and it went out on the wire services and went all over the place. You know, it was Camp Callan, train right to win the fight, I think was what they used. And the camp photographer, who was actually assigned to the Signal Corps, was going to OCS. And they had to have somebody in the PR officers said, well, is that photographer going to be available? I wasn't a photographer then. I just took that picture and it turned out well.
Did you have the desire then, though? Or?
Oh, yeah, oh, I sure did. And so, by gosh, that picture kept me from being shipped out. But then I stayed on at Camp Callan for 17 months. I have a column they wrote when I left, and then I went to cadet school and got a commission as a photo officer in the Air Force. But I had 17 months to learn photography with the help of the Army, and I did a bunch of covers, and I just all released, through the PR officer at Camp Callan.
So that's
I can.
that's on-the-job training, and you were getting paid to.
Oh yeah.
And that's a lot better than getting shot at.
You're right, and I was. Then of course, after I got my commission, I went on, but and then I was the photo officer for the Continental Third Air Force that was headquartered in Tampa and MacDill Field, and I traveled around, as the photo, checking out photo labs and all that. But I learned to be a photographer. 17 months at Camp Callan, California.
You're lucky they didn't say, this guy's good, we ought to make him a combat photographer.
That's right. That's right. I was lucky. Well, the only reason I left when I did is I applied for officers training in the photo. See, they had three things you could be: a photo officer, communications officer, and engineering officer, and of course photography. And my gosh, I qualified and went, and I made it and got my commission and went right on with photography. Yes, which is good.
Now, somewhere along the line, when you got out of the military, you decided to make this your career?
Well, here's what happened. While I was doing all this, I did a number of covers for Newsweek while I was in the service at Camp Callan. And the picture editor, which became a very good friend, when he found out, I said, well, I'll be getting out soon. And he said, well, my gosh, we've been using, that was back in the early days of Newsweek, and they've been using wire service pictures and so on. We thought we should have, because it's a weekly publication, we should have our own cover photographer. And of course, a cover is always backed up by pictures inside, because it's always an important story, so they need art for inside. And he said, could you come and see us? And I said, I think so. So I went to MacDill Field, and I'd made a lot of contacts then, and you could hitchhike in the Air Force then. You could hitchhike with planes that were making trips. Mm-hmm. Well, I found out that there was a B-24 bomber going up to New York, and that's where Newsweek was. And I found out that there was no seats, but I could sit right up in the bomber section with all the glass underneath. You look down and there, that was the seat available. So sure, I'll go. So I flew up on a B-24 bomber to have an interview with Newsweek.
With a bombardier's view.
Yeah, right. And by golly, a couple of weeks after I got back, I was just about ready to get out of the service. and they said, the job is yours. So I went right from the service to start work at Newsweek.
No.
And I worked there 1 year, and ever since then, I've been without a job.
Even on your own.
On my own. Yeah.
Now, were you able to get paid for the Newsweek photos while you were in the service?
Oh, no, that was all released through, yeah.
So there was
I
nothing.
was getting my pay, yeah.
But
I
just
got-
the honor of being on the cover of a
yeah, it
national
was all, you
magazine.
bet. Yeah, it was, yeah, I have, before you go, I'll give you something that sums up that whole 17 months there that they wrote up when I left.
Yeah, I want to. I think it's this magazine here. When I first learned that Ozzie took these, I said, I wonder if I've got any. I don't have that many old sport magazines in my collection. But this is the December 1963 issue of Sport. And Del Schaffner is a picture you took.
It is?
And
I can't remember.
yeah, it's
What's the name?
I think I'm 99% sure it's an Ozzie Sweet cover here. I'm sure you, with the thousands of guys you've taken pictures of.
You know, they usually credit it.
Let's see, cover photo. Well, there it is, cover Ozzie Sweet. Yeah, but this was important to me, this magazine, because I wrote a letter to the editor,
Yeah.
and my first time I ever got my name published
Oh,
was a letter to the editor, and
in that magazine?
yeah, and little did I know that I had an Ozzie Sweet magazine in my collection at the time. So it's an important magazine to me at the time, and it's even more important now that
What's the
I've
year
learned
on
about
that?
it. That's 1963, December 1963.
Yeah. There you go, Stein.
Yeah. Now, you say you've been on your own since that first year at Newsweek.
Yeah, the thing
When
is-
did you move into sports?
What happened on that is that I had just done Bob Feller for a cover of Newsweek. That's when the Indians won, you know, and Cleveland Indians.
It was 46 maybe?
It'd be about 46, you know.
48, can't remember what year
40,
it was.
right in there, 46, somewhere between 46 48. And a fellow named Ed Fitzgerald, who was the editor of Sport, and Sport at that time was only about 2 years old. See, they hadn't been going very long. And they'd been using, you know, just pictures here and there, and it was the same sort of thing, you know. We sure loved that. Oh, he called, and, you know, called Newsweek and said that we just saw that cover of Feller on Newsweek, and we sure like it. Would you have any spare time where you could maybe do some work for us? And I said yes. In about 2 weeks, I'm leaving Newsweek and going to start freelancing. So he said, come in and see us. Come in and see us. So I did, and we talked. And I said, well, I'm not really a sports photographer, you know, which I wasn't.
Right.
And, you know, he said, but that doesn't matter. That we like that picture, and we'd hire you really mainly to take covers. But you know, again, you had to back those covers up.
Right. Yeah, it's not just a cover. Somebody's got to write the story, and you take inside photos of the person.
Oh, yes, right.
Caleb, if you could grab that shot of Ozzie again with all those sport magazine covers, Judy could get a picture of that. To those of us growing up in the 1950s, Ozzie, obviously the Norman Rockwell Saturday Evening Post covers are probably the most prominent thing we're going to remember. But for sports fans, the Ozzie Sweet covers on Sport magazine are just as important to us as the Rockwell paintings are to the...
Oh yeah, and I've had more people, young fellows, come and say, when I was a kid, I used to cut out your pictures and put them on the wall along with the Playboy girls. So I felt pretty honored.
Maybe to cover the Playboy girls, then when
Right,
mom's not in the room, the
right.
pictures came off.
That's right. But yeah, that, and of course that started. For a number of years I did every cover for them, you know, they had me going everywhere. It was a wonderful start from someone freelancing, to have something like that. In fact, I had a contract with them.
So even though you were freelancing, it was almost a full-time job right
Yeah.
there, so
Right.
it made
Yeah.
finding other jobs a lot easier.
It was.
Now, how many different, would you dare to get a count on how many different magazine titles you've been
Oh, boy, if you count all
featured on?
count all
50
the
to
trade,
100, or?
yeah, if you count all the trade journals and so on, it's a lot. I know that I've done an awful lot of covers, but another thing that you've heard of Family Circle.
Mhm.
Well, Family Circle back then was 5 cents a copy, and the fellow, what was his name? Oh boy, a nice guy, the editor. When I used to come in, well, anyway, he saw some things, and I started working, and by gosh, the same thing happened with them. For about 2 years, I did all the covers. I would make a point of being a cover specialist. But what he used to say when I'd come to have a conference, he'd want me to come in, and he'd have his art director there at Family Circle. His secretary, would announce that Mr. Sweet is here to see you, and he'd say, "Well, send the boy genius in." It was nice.
So did you use that on your calling card? No. Boy genius?
I should have. Yeah, that was his. Yeah, what was, I should remember
You
his.
figured you'd work for less money if he said that.
Right. That probably.
Flatter you.
That's right. Yeah. Oh yeah. That was really nice.
Now is this wall still in existence here? How did you,
Those we just put those up and photographed it, and just took them down.
So it just
Big flat.
wasn't a display somewhere that you had in your previous home or anything? No, it's just,
We have a great big one here that my wife had made up in the dark room. Great big one, the same picture. She liked that so well, And
Now-
I've forgotten how old I'd be, about 30-something then. See, I racked up most of those pretty young.
sure.
Yeah.
Now you were so prolific as far as numbers of. Were you able to keep a copy of everything, or just too many to?
Oh, I have quite a few. Yeah.
I mean, all these different family circles and boys.
Yeah, there's quite a few of them. But see, one of the things that in Francistown, 60, I've forgotten, I don't even want to remember, but I had a terrible fire.
Oh no.
Yeah, and an awful lot of transparencies, negatives were burned up. Downstairs, I'll show you where I have a whole lot of safes, and they're filled, but I lost an awful lot. Yeah, but luckily, all the sports stuff happened to be out. You see, at that time, almost everything I'd done for sports was out, so that was intact. Like
Now-
all those things.
Now you are selling off some of your transparencies. I think I've seen some on
Yeah,
eBay. There's
Some
a-
I have, yeah. I keep the book rights to them because we're using them in books. But yeah, some of them were sold off, but I still have lots.
Yeah, I can imagine.
Yeah.
Now, how does it? Well, here's a picture you
Yeah, that's the,
showed me, and you'd already sent me a note on a
Yeah.
card years ago.
uh-huh.
Whatever year it was, we started talking this year. I don't know if you can get a shot of that, Judy. This here is a famous photo, you say, that's used a lot?
I know I've done a lot of cards for Wandy, but that particular one won first place in the friendship category.
Now, your photos,
I just want to check what is his name again? This guy.
James Mason.
James Mason. That's right.
Yeah.
We're doing a book on kittens and pets, and that's going to be used because of the cats in it.
Oh, with the James Mason photo?
Yeah.
If you-
James Mason.
If you want to see it, you're going to have to get your own copy of Legends of the Field, so we're not going to show you that one. And right next to it, we have a picture of Ingrid Bergman, which is in the kit you gave me,
Yeah.
and Albert Einstein.
Uh-huh.
He'll pull out see if my 16-year-old knows who Albert Einstein is.
Sure he does. Sure he does.
He's never played in the NBA, so he may not know who he is. Yeah. But how did you happen to? I can see Yogi Berra, right next to Albert Einstein here.
Yeah,
But how
that's
did you
quite
happen?
fair.
How did you happen to take a photo of Albert Einstein?
Well, of course, we put those together because they're both great minds.
Well, Ozzie is quoted as much as Einstein is. I mean, not Ozzie, but Yogi. I mean, it's quoted just
Right,
as much
exactly. More almost, I think. Well, no, see, I did that when I was shooting for Newsweek, and that was a Newsweek cover. And I went to with the science editor. He was teaching at Princeton at the time. That's his house at Princeton on the Princeton campus, and that's how I happened to shoot him. But the one that was on the cover was much more serious. Here, he was just laughing. One of the things that was, see, you know how popular these shoes are where you just slide into them?
Mm-hmm.
You know, and don't have to bother with laces or
Right.
anything. Well, he was wearing an old pair of Oxfords with no laces in and the backs all broken down. So he just slid his feet in.
Yeah.
And I kidded him. I said, "My golly, Einstein, you're going to start a whole new fad here, fashion." And he laughed, and I happened to get a good smile out of him. But you see how far ahead of time he was? I mean, now that's the big fashion.
That's right. And you were right. He was setting the pace. So you were very wise in that prediction.
Well, I was. It could have been a thing where I was making fun of him or something, but he knew I wasn't.
Now, I would think that might be one instance, or you might be a bit intimidated. Are there any of these people that posed for you that you were intimidated by a little bit, where you felt, boy, it's such an honor to...
Well, well, a little bit. You can't help it, but you have to make up your mind. You're going to be persuasive, and you have to control the situation, because sometimes, especially if you're photographing artists of any kind, like actors or dancers or...
They got their own idea what they want.
Yeah, and you listen to it, and then explain maybe why this would be better, or the lighting is better for this, and so on. In other words, politely get your own way, not let them take over. That's because that could be easy. I remember that I had a little problem. The only one I ever had trouble with that way was Bob Hope. Bob Hope was going to take over and tell me just how everything should be done. But I carefully steered the thing through that one. It was a thing where you're having breakfast in bed. That's what they wanted, you know. So I had all that brought up to a hotel room. When he came to this location, and he had to get some shoes off and stuff, and get in bed with the tray there like he was having breakfast in bed.
Tell me about now. Let's take the Einstein photo. Let's mention this Bob Hope photo. Are you able to retain the rights? Now, you did the Einstein for Newsweek. Now, is that a Newsweek photo, or is it an Ozzie Sweet photo?
No, it's actually an Ozzie Sweet photo.
So you own the rights to it. You can use it as you want. It's yours.
The only thing is, any sales or anything have to be shared with the family or the estate. In that particular case.
Of Albert Einstein.
Mm-hmm. That isn't always the case, but in this case it is.
Now, how about like a Bob Hope? You've done a lot of celebrities now.
Oh, yeah.
Once they pose for you, it's yours?
Yeah. No problem. There you go.
Okay, I'm going to move that chair a little closer to me because I'm going to want to be handling these books a little bit more. So I'll give Judy a break and give Ozzie a break, and we'll be right back.
See, we're doing a thing on spring training now that's going to be devoted.
Yeah, this spring when I
training.
called, you were gone, and you got back. You said...
so there's Bob Hope having breakfast.
There's
in bed.
Bob Hope in bed.
Having breakfast.
This was now Bob's 100 years old there as we speak.
He just made it. But by golly, they say you can't see or hear.
No.
Yeah, but even to make it.
Yeah. Well, we all thought George Burns was going to do it, but he didn't quite do it, did
Didn't
he?
quite make it. No.
No. Now this, of course, is a very... Well, it's kind of... There's the cover of Newsweek. This is the one that
started the whole thing.
got him into the sports business here.
Yeah.
I've got to introduce you when you're up there to our good friend Sid Calci, who used to be a Richie Rich comic book cartoonist.
Yeah.
He's about the same age as you are. He lives in Essex, and he's a big Indians fan. In fact, last year, he grew up as an Indians fan. Last year I arranged with the Montreal Expos that he threw out the first pitch when Cleveland was in Montreal.
Oh, right.
And you got it? and kind of made his year. But he's done a lot of drawings and stuff with the Indians and so on. And Sid's a great guy. And another guy I want you to meet is Arto Monaco. Now, did you come up back our way after you left this area? Have you spent much time coming back to the Essex County region?
Well, I almost always swing over, just look at the old homestead and just swing up through.
Because I don't know, Arto used to own a place, he started a place called Land of Make Believe in Upper J.
Oh, yes, I've seen that.
Yeah, yeah.
That's what he does. Huh?
That's what he did, and
Yeah.
he designed The Great Escape and
See, that's where.
Railroad French Tone, and
Yeah.
these are pictures you're going to have to buy the book for, folks. So I'm not going to show you everything here now. Before we move on, okay, you want to talk about this
Well,
snap by
this-
Aunt Edna? with the
That one by
$3?
Aunt Edna, and that was just, you know why that picture was taken? My Aunt Edna took it with a little box camera. I can show you the camera that it was taken with. That because I was going to go and get my hair cut like a boy
Yeah, I was looking
instead
there.
of a bob.
Yeah,
You
it
know,
looked like
it was
a-
the fashion then.
You look like the early Beatles here. You had
Right. Well, it was the fashion back then. Boys used to wear the Dutch, the bangs and yeah.
Again, you're going to have to buy the book to see that picture. Now, before we move on, are there any other? I've got quite a few collection. It says Hopalong Cassidy in here and so on.
Yeah.
Are there any Hopalong Cassidy movies that you were in? That,
I don't remember the
Don't remember the names of
I was in a couple of, I can't remember.
Because I got every one of his Hopalong Cassidy movies.
Oh, you do?
Yeah.
Oh, that a hobby?
I'm a cowboy, old Western fan, so I've got.
Oh, are you?
All the Roy Rogers. And
Do
all
you,
the
do you
copies.
read the Western books?
Oh yeah,
Do you?
yeah. In fact, we're hoping within the next month or so to have a comic book out honoring Tom Tyler, who was born in Port Henry.
Oh, yeah.
And Arto Monaco did the cover, and Sid Calci did the comic book pages.
Oh, yes.
And so it's the first ever. And Tom Tyler, you may not remember the name, but he was one of the Three Musketeers. He was Captain Marvel. He was
Oh,
the
yeah.
Phantom in the serials. And
Yeah.
so yeah, I'm a big cowboy fan. Yeah.
Are you? Well, if
Yeah.
I took you into where I do my reading, you'd see a stack of cowboy books. I've got two or three of them going all the time.
Yeah.
My wife says, "How do you keep track of which is
Who
which?"
shot who? Huh?
Yeah. I had a lot of fun with that.
Jimmy Durante with
Yeah,
the butterfly and
the
that.
butterfly and some rubber cement.
He cemented it to his nose.
Cemented it to his nose.
So that's a dead butterfly.
Oh, yes, yeah. You know how they mount butterflies, and I had to carry it so carefully. I think,
Now, maybe Judy can slide down to that picture of Jackie Robinson sliding in. Now that again is a posed picture, right? In fact, is he sitting on a chair? Is that what I see?
yes, that's right, yeah. See
I don't know if you can see it there, Judy, but underneath him. Now, how would you block that off?
Well, I see
You'd-
that was deliberately taken. to
Yeah,
show
yeah,
how
right,
it's done.
right.
But then I have others that were used through chairs. And then I had a friend at the side of an assistant with a big thing of ashes. And right did I take it, because not sand, but ashes has more dust, and he'd throw it in as the ash dust came up and hide, see, like
Hide the
like
chair,
here.
yeah.
Yeah, hide the chair, and it would look, see, like this.
Now, you're dealing with these major sports stars, and you're
See, that's
tying up.
later on, I photographed him again for
Bob
sport.
Feller again, yeah, for sport. Now you're tying up a substantial amount of their time, just like I'm tying up your time today. But how do you get these people to agree to pose for you?
Well, part of it, first of all, I never just go up the same day and say I'm going to shoot a cover. I make, and it all has to be done through the PR director for the club, for the team, and he'll speak to the player. It's harder now than it used to be when I.
Yes.
And that was before television, but and then I'll have a
In
little.
a $5 million contract.
That's right. That's
You don't need
right.
your money anymore.
That's right. Of course, they don't get paid.
Right, so
This is
you're
that-
tying up a lot of their time.
Yeah, that's right. And I tell them that this is a cover. I need a few shots to back up the cover, and it'll take such and such a time. Usually, I ask for at least a half hour, and sometimes that would mean so it wouldn't interfere with their practice time. That would mean they'd have to come in and suit up earlier to make time for the damn photographer. And then we'd have a definite time, and I'd come the next day and do the photography. But I would outline a little bit what I was going to do, so it wouldn't be a surprise, and they would. Now, for instance, in that shot,
Mickey Mantle.
yeah, it came early, and I had to arrange for all those other people to be there.
Yeah, an umpire
to
and a
stage
catcher.
that. Yeah.
Yeah. Now, we'll get into it later here, but Mantle became,
Oh man, and
you became very good friends.
oh yeah, not to name drop, but he and I were good buddies. Yeah.
And you've got a whole book devoted to Mickey Mantle and his friends.
Yeah.
And this fellow here,
Oh,
I'm
yeah.
hoping some people up in the northern part of New York State might recognize this fellow. He looks a little bit older now.
Oh, yeah, I photographed him this
you?
spring training, because we're, in our spring training book, we're got a whole section of him, because since his playing days, he's gone to spring training every single spring training since he started.
Since about 56, I think he
Yeah,
broke in
every
56.
single one. He was there, and he's got all gray hair and everything, but he still has a great smile.
Yeah. We go up on a semi-regular basis to Montreal to cover the Expos, and Frank Robinson is that person we were referring to, and I
He
wonder,
was the first ever black manager of a major league team.
right,
Yeah.
and now it's just so common we don't keep count anymore.
That's
It's
right.
kind of like Ozzie Sweet covers, we don't keep count
Yeah,
anymore.
right.
But Frank, I remember last year when Brad Wilkerson was hitting 20, 21 home runs or whatever, it ended up being 23, but setting an Expo record.
Yeah.
And I had to wonder, Frank didn't say a peep about the fact he hit 38 as a rookie.
Yeah.
you know, and,
Yeah.
you know, there he is cheering for this guy to break the Expo record with the low 20s. Now, you got several pictures with Jackie Robinson, so that's a very unique person. And
Yeah, this is after, when he worked for that restaurant chain. He was the personnel officer.
Casey Stengel, the polls for you.
Yeah, isn't she a nice looking person?
His wife?
Yeah.
Yes.
Their son, got hooked up, died, drugs.
Drugs, got involved in drugs.
Yeah.
And,
Of
you got
course,
Ted Klazuski with his rippling
big,
muscles.
Big arm.
Well, actually, he didn't have big muscles. He just had big arms.
That's right.
You know, he was the first guy ever to cut off his sleeves.
Yeah, and then well, of course, I asked him to pose so they'd show up. He didn't. He wasn't shy about that.
No, the big clue was very proud of his arms that were the size of most people's legs.
Yeah.
Now,
And there's a little fun story there.
I'm gonna
That was during.
I want to get rid of this
Yeah.
dust jacket here before I
Yeah.
destroy it. Okay, Caleb, why don't I put you to work, Caleb? That's right, Caleb is there. I forgot. Page 35. Caleb will hold up that picture. This is Casey Stengel and a couple of sports writers.
Yes, and of course, I photographed him and so on, but he would have this session with the sports writers like this almost every day. Now, this was in St. Petersburg, way back when they were the champs for about 4 years in a row. And he'd have this little things like a park, it was so pleasant there and everything. And then I shot that, but then I'd be off somewhere shooting a setup, but I could hear him talking to this group, you see. And you'd hear him talking, quiet, and there'd be maybe anywhere from 3 to 4 or 5, and they're all writing. You'd hear the talking, then a burst of laughter. Then you'd hear him talking again low, and then wham, another burst of laughter. And that's the way they loved him. The press just loved him.
Now, they claim that when he wanted to, he could talk normal. He didn't talk stinglese all the time.
Right,
He
right.
just did that for the benefit of.
That's right. Oh, he was a real ham. You can see the pictures I took of him. I asked him to really exaggerate disgust and anger, and he sure did a good job.
Yeah, he's shaking his head there. Now here's on page 42 and 43. You had to get a lot of people to pose for this. It looks like you're right there in the line of fire.
No, that was just a grab shot. Now, see, this year we were down there and spent a number of days. Gosh, we were about 6 days going from camp to camp, getting spring training for the book. See, we have all this stuff way back, and we're going to bring it up to date. The book on spring training, we're calling it The Boys of Spring. And it's devoted to spring.
Oh.
Yeah, the steel on the Boys of
Again,
Summer.
yeah, right.
But about 2/3 of what I did down there, this spring training,
Caleb? Yeah, go ahead.
two-thirds of what I did down there was grab, like what you just saw. Just grab stuff.
So this year was not posed, is that what you're saying?
No, yes, yeah, grab.
You were in the line of fire here. A foul ball could have come bouncing off your equipment in your head. And
Yeah, could have. Yeah.
I made that mistake one time at a high school game. I was taping in Shazy. Actually, it happened to me twice, but once was a baseball game. And the backstop was very small and close to the batter. And, you know, it never dawned on me how fast that ball got there. And the ball came, and you can see it when I put it in slow motion, coming nice and slow. And it got me right here, right in the chest.
Wow.
And I say, you know, it could have hit me higher or lower, or it could have hit the camera. It hit me in a perfect spot. But you hear me go, ooh.
Yeah.
So you got to be very conscious of that. Another time I got hit with in a softball game, a girls' softball game,
Yeah.
with a foul tip that just glanced off the bat and it hit me square in the head. So
Oh,
I've learned to stay out of the way.
yeah.
Now, when we move on here, we come to a series of photos that weren't taken with their usual fancy cameras. This is just kind of
No, just handheld,
a little handheld camera out,
Mazabon.
a little fishing excursion with,
Yeah.
you mentioned a few names here, Whitey Ford,
Yeah.
Mickey Mantle, Billy Martin,
That's right. There's,
and
they, at the end of,
we can't seem to get our prop man to hold up the books.
at the end of spring training, there's always a few days, you know.
Uh-huh.
So I happened to be, this is back, you know, when I spent a lot of time at the Yankees. And I had this good friend that had a big deep sea fishing boat. And I said, how would you fellas like to come out and go deep sea fishing? I got this friend who'd take you out, good, safe, fine boat, everything you need, poles and baits, everything's there. Would you like to do it? And I was aiming at those guys. See, they were the three bad boys. And that was where Billy was moved on.
Yeah.
And, oh gosh, yes, they were there on time, and we went out. And I had sandwiches and stuff and Cokes.
Cokes? No beer?
No beer, no. Didn't want a picture of them holding a bottle.
Yeah.
But, they were very lucky. They got some good pictures.
Yeah. And it took, now Whitey Ford, I've read here in that latest, I think the Mickey Mantle book, took 30 years before he got his copies of that. Is that true?
It's a little exaggerated. It was a while, but with the writer, you'd like Kennelly, the fellow that wrote this. He's a peach of a guy. And he and I are working on these other books too. But he kind of dragged that out a little bit.
A little poetic license. Huh?
Right. Nice round figure.
You've got a quick shot here of Steve Garvey, and there's Ted Williams, who just left us a few years ago. Was it tough to get Ted Williams to pose? Now, this is a guy who wasn't known for being that friendly with the media.
Oh, no, Ted Williams was a good... The first time I photographed him, and it's on the cover of a magazine over there, or a book, rather, over there, very first time, when he looked absolutely handsome, young, and so on, it took me 3 days, 2 days of waiting. But it was partly because the fellow that was handling all that, the PR director, had crammed too many things in. And so finally he said, "You're still here." And I said, "Yeah, I don't mind. I like it. So, it's spring training time, and I'm down here in warm Florida." And he laughed, and he did it. And then from then on, because his father was a professional photographer, had a portrait studio, and we both have an interest in fishing. And we developed a very nice friend. You saw what a nice thing he wrote in the back of the book there, on the jacket.
It's been a while.
Yeah,
Williams wrote a...
yeah.
Uh-huh.
It was right on the jacket, I think.
And on the jacket? Oh, okay. Okay. Yeah, there it is. It says, if there was ever a photographer that was great to work with, it was Ozzie Sweet. He always took a different approach. He's a great guy and a great photographer. It's Ted Williams. And Mickey Mantle's quote is, "Ozzie's work is more than just photographs of athletes. Ozzie would hang out with the guys, as we see fishing with you, and he was a friend. He knew who you were and what you were about, and made his pictures more important and personal. When I look at his photographs today, they bring back so many memories that might have been forgotten if not have been captured by the various personal times and feelings." And that's got to be true. At the time, it may have seemed inconvenient, but as they get into the autumn part of their life and they look back, they must really appreciate having those photos
Oh, yeah.
because it's at their prime. Now here's the
Photographed her every year he played, from rookie, you know.
all the way
right on, yeah.
up to 68. Huh? Now here's the Say Hey Kid,
Yeah,
Willie Mays,
yeah.
and again that's a pose, I'm sure, or
Oh, that's a grab, yeah. Just
it's
a grab
just-
smiley.
yeah, he just happened to. There probably weren't too many. You've got I see on page 54 here. You've got Sandy Koufax and Warren Spahn and Vern Loff and the Pirates, and probably weren't too many stars in that era in the 50s and early 60s that you didn't grab
No,
it.
just about everybody, yeah.
Now, did you kind of
And I used to, you know, do basketball and soccer and hockey and everything, but not, it was mainly, see, here he is.
here's Willie at home,
Yeah, and that's his wife, and this is
page
their bedroom.
61.
You know, look at that, pretty elaborate bed.
That's his
Canopy
actual
on it.
home?
Oh, yeah, oh, yeah.
Page 61. It's a picture of Willie and his wife, and looks like she was
She
well
did-
trained here. She's putting
she-
her shoes on. And,
Well, she, oh, that was something I asked her to do for the picture. But she decorated it, you know. She was very proud to have it photographed.
And on the next page over, on page 62, we got Leo the Lip, DeRocher.
Yeah.
Was he all right to work with? He was
Very
another
ni-
feisty fellow.
Very nice, yeah. And he was married to that wonderful actress. What was her name? Forgotten who it is now.
I can't remember who.
Yeah. Married to a very, very beautiful.
Yes. I'm sure I'll think of it later, but it doesn't come to me right now.
No.
And another photo. Now this photo on page 66 with Jackie Robinson. I assume that one there was not a grab.
And Pee Wee Reese, double play.
That's a
Double
pose.
Yeah, double play act. It's supposed to represent double play.
Mm-hmm.
Pee Wee Reese was very much a friend to Jackie Robinson.
When Jackie broke in, Pee Wee helped.
Yeah, he took a lot of abuse from the audience, from fellow players, opposition players, umpires. You know, he was the first black man to play Major League Ball. And it was Pee Wee that was, see, here he is right here. These are the boys of summer.
Page 73 here,
Yeah.
yes.
And see, he was the first black man to play, so he really took a lot of abuse. But this guy stood by him.
And Pee Wee was from the South, and that made it even more meaningful that he
Yeah.
would stick up for Jackie like he
Yeah.
did. But you've got Carl Erskine, Oysk, Gil Hodges, Pee Wee Reese, Jackie Robinson, and Duke Snyder. Erskine's probably the only one. Oh, no, I guess Hodges didn't make the Hall of Fame yet. But those,
Yeah.
did you feel a little guilty taking pictures of these Dodgers here, being Mickey Mantle's buddy?
Oh, well, that was an assignment, you know. That was, you know, photographed all of those.
You got Willie, Mickey, and the Duke. There's a picture of Duke Snyder by himself, and
Yeah.
there's a ball coming into his glove on page 76. There's so many of these. Now, have the photos in this book all been published elsewhere?
Oh, right. They all appeared in sport through the years.
So these are all.
All of the sport, just about there.
Now, when sport uses them, they get the rights to them for a period of time. Is that how it
Yeah,
works?
that's how, and then the rights revert back to me.
And there's Murray Wills, and if you name them.
See, that's the same shot as the big print over there, the one coming across home plate. That one there.
Tommy Davis.
And that was shot on 5x7 with a 5x7 view camera. Great big 8x10 camera with a 5x7 back. Camera this big on a big tripod. That was shot.
So you don't make it easy on yourself sometimes.
Oh,
you,
well, the thing is, swinging deals. But you see, it's staged. But it's a great example of terrific acting. See, they're congratulating us. Come over the home plate. Look how believable
yeah,
they're making
yeah, the
that.
smiles on you.
Oh,
swear
yeah,
that,
they're making it so.
yeah.
So it isn't just the positioning and the action. It's getting these people to give you the you know, the expression that fits the action.
Yeah, and it wasn't just this wasn't a routine run. This is a game winner. You could tell
Yeah.
this run here won the game.
Yeah,
There's Frank Robinson again on page 90.
yeah, and you can see it's beautiful.
Gold teeth.
Yeah.
Do these guys remember you? Does Frank Robinson? You
Oh,
walk up
yeah,
and say,
sure.
"Oh,
Yeah, but he had been notified that I was coming with Larry Kennelly. See, Larry and I are doing the book together. and we were together almost, visiting one right after the other. It's the first time that here's some more of him. He was a wonderful subject.
Yeah, the next 2 pages, Caleb, if you could show those. Yeah, it just, now this picture looks innocent to us, but he looks like he's young there. That might have been early in his career. Like I said, I think he broke in 56.
Oh, yeah,
So there's a white fan with a black photographer. I'm sure in some spots that might have been a little controversial in the 50s. That
maybe, yeah.
yeah, you know, it looks perfectly innocent here
Yeah,
these days, but you know, back then,
yeah.
there's a picture of Frank with the Oriole uniform. He won the Triple Crown with the Orioles in '66.
He's going to appear. A lot of those pictures you see there will appear in the new books, Spring Training.
Do you have a date when that's going to come out?
We're
Boys is
hoping it'll be ready for Christmas, but I don't know. Might not
Okay.
make it.
Caleb, if you show your mother the picture of Ted Klazuski. Now, in this one, the skin tone is not natural. It's got a red tint in it, and I assume that is deliberate?
No, that's
No?
just the age.
Just the age?
And they didn't correct it.
Okay,
Yeah, yes.
so that can be correct.
Sometimes you get a little shift of color in the transparencies,
Uh-huh.
and they didn't seem to realize that they could have corrected that easily.
Well, they may have thought it was deliberate because
Yeah,
it's Cincinnati Reds and the
yeah,
red tint, and you know that's what I thought, that
Yeah,
maybe it was deliberate that he was supposed to look red.
he was a great subject.
Johnny Bench
Yeah,
on
oh,
page
yeah.
100.
I did a fashion thing of him with sports, and they would, back in those days, the sport did a fashion thing with a well-known athlete about every other month,
Uh-huh.
clothing, men's clothing. And they'd spend the whole day just for the exchange for the clothes. You think they'd do that today?
No.
But anyway, I had an absolutely gorgeous girl, that was before he was married, to pose with him in some of those, so he enjoyed that.
You got the clothes and
Yeah, that's
got the
right,
pose
yeah.
with the girl.
Yeah,
Now here's Pete Rose.
yeah, good old Pete,
He's got a bit of a scowl on his face. and
yeah.
he,
I think he's gonna make it.
You think he's going to make it?
Oh, yeah. Yeah,
He certainly has the credentials to make it, but time will tell.
Yeah.
I think he will eventually.
Oh, I think
Whether
it
it will
will.
be in his lifetime or not.
I think it will. I
I'm
think
not
it
sure.
will. Yeah, I think it will. Oh, I have to tell you the story here.
Like Ralph Kiner or
No,
Pete Rose?
this right here.
Oh,
Yeah,
the little
that
photo
picture.
of Ralph Kiner, the small one.
The first time we thought about that, they thought it'd be nice to do it with Yogi. See, I brought these girls all in with all that stuff, so I could have hands, be sure, and have pretty girls and hands all around. And I talked to him the day before, Yogi, and he said, Ozzie, I don't dare, my wife would kill me. So I had to switch, and that's when I switched and I used him.
And Ralph Kiner became
Yeah. Yeah, but Yogi said my wife would kill me.
Now, is this photo sold when you do this? I mean, you bring in, you've got probably 8, 10 girls
Oh yeah,
here.
it's an assignment.
That's expensive to,
No, that's an assignment.
yeah.
Yeah, see, once on sports stuff that involved players, that was always the things I'd shoot freelance and for the file would be pet things and scenics and also just about anything else. But anything that involved a well-known person, whether it was sports or something else, that was always assignment. And about 2/3 of what I did was assignment, but I shot for the file some too. You see.
But you were able to retain the rights to the,
Oh yes, oh yeah, yeah.
so you, there
I had
never
a
was,
I had a contract with Sport where, I still have a copy of that in the safe, where the rights reverted back to me after I've forgotten how many years it was.
now, was that standard, or that's something you had to fight for?
Oh no, it was.
That's kind of standard?
It
Because
was then. Yeah, see that goes way back.
Yeah, because I know when I wrote in the middle 60s for a Sick magazine, which is kind of like Mad magazine,
Uh-huh.
right on the back of when I endorsed the check, it said, they owned all the rights. Crestwood Publishing owned all the rights to every character I created or whatever else, and I was signing away everything when I signed that check.
Yeah.
But that wasn't the case with that. And here's a man whose legend is certainly not dimmed over the
Oh, yeah.
the years since he died, Roberto Clemente.
Yeah. Great subject. This picture, this one people love. You see, I took it
The little one?
about at the same time, about 7 months before he was killed.
Yeah, and it looks like he's reflecting on his own
Yeah.
demise right there.
Yeah.
Little did you know at the time that, that he wouldn't be with us much longer. Willie Stargell, he's somebody who left us just recently. Pops, as he became known.
Yeah.
He was a great guy. I met him back in 1980.
Yeah.
And he was a great guy. There's still a seat up in Olympic Stadium where he hit a line drive home run that you just wonder how that ball got there. It's an amazing shot.
Yeah.
Stan the Man Musial. Now this is Mickey Mantle's hero here, I think.
Yes, Stan the Man was really something, and I know where they got that. He was an immaculate
Page
all this.
page 112. I bought this book here off eBay. Let me interrupt you.
Oh,
And somebody clipped out the Stan the Man
oh yeah.
Musial picture.
Yeah.
So I'll have to show it here. There's Stan Musial.
Yeah.
Go ahead, you were telling us.
Oh, well, see, he was very friendly and nice and very cooperative, but he was reserved. But he was talk about all his clothes were tailor-made, all in wonderful taste. He was a dresser. Ties, no other athlete I ever knew dressed the way he did. And the other thing was, he was a wonderful ballroom dancer. You know, you don't think of that,
No.
a ball player, do you? That's he was something. And
Now-
I don't know where they got the Stan the Man. Maybe that was it, because when he'd walk in, anytime, even, and of course when he'd walk in, he was always,
Carried himself well.
and such good taste too. You know, tailored, but the tie and everything went together so well. Just and on the floor waltzing. God, he was handsome.
Now, I'm skipping a lot of the pages here. Here's one with Steve Carlton. I'm stopping on him for a while. I guess Caleb got the shot. Because here's another one who's not known for being particularly friendly with the media.
Yeah.
But you didn't have any problems with Carlton?
No.
And Hank Aaron, of course,
No.
went on to...
Somebody asked me if that was crowd was airbrushed in there, but it's so fortunate to have it. See how it made him stand out?
yeah, the big white cloud behind him, yeah. That's a natural cloud.
Yeah.
Next page is Eddie Matthews and Warren Spahn.
Mm-hmm.
Warren Spahn, as we're taping this, I think tomorrow Roger Clemens is going again for his 300th, but Warren Spahn won 363 games, I think.
Yeah.
Robin Roberts, there's a picture that, with all the wins he had for a team that finished as low as the Phillies, probably personal wins to team wins, his ratio has got to be one of the best ever, probably.
Yeah.
To win 286 games for his career, mainly for a team that was toward the bottom of the rung every year, is amazing.
Yeah.
There's Bob Feller again.
Yeah. Mudcat. I think Mudcat was there, wasn't it?
Yeah.
That Mudcat?
I don't know if Mudcat was ahead or
No, I guess I mixed him up.
Mudcat Grant.
I
I
didn't
don't know.
Mudcat.
Maybe he's coming up or something.
Yeah. See now, when I went out to Arizona to photograph the Indians, they just went by one of them.
Yeah, Bob Feller, Bob Lemon, I mean, and a couple of others here.
Yeah, I went way out into the desert to get no scene background. You notice how there's no
Yeah.
scene? It's real flat,
Right.
very flat, and I got that. They went way out in the desert with me, so I could get that stuff.
Amazing. Show those two pictures there. That's Lou Boudreau and Joe Gordon.
Yeah, he was Lou Boudreau was the captain.
Yeah, he was the boy genius too. Now, wasn't he? He still stole your name there. He was the boy manager there. He was
Yeah, he was player manager.
and as a young, just
Yeah.
a youngster, he wasn't that old when he
Yeah.
became the player manager. So I think he also was known as the boy genius. So
Was he?
it wasn't a title that you alone
Well,
had.
I wish I could remember that man's name.
But so many, Boo Powell, Brooks Robinson, Minnie
Is that
Minoso.
Mudcat there?
No, that was Minnie Minoso.
Oh, Minnie Minoso.
Now, Minnie Minoso, he played, and I don't know if it mentions it here, more decades than anybody, I think. There you go, 49 to 1980. He came back and played a game or two just to
Yeah.
play in another decade.
And if you'll make an observation, if he doesn't have beautiful teeth, look at straight and
Oh, yeah.
white and beautiful.
Oh, those are, yeah.
Great smile. And again, we have another book working too. It's called "They Smiled for My Camera," and it's going to be all kinds of people's big smiles.
I can imagine you come up with a lot of themes when you've got so many pictures to choose from. Go ahead.
There's
Mudcat
Mudcat.
Grant.
Yeah, I
Jim Mudcat Grant,
I always loved that name.
page 160. Yeah, it's kind of like Catfish Hunter, or it's
I love the
nice.
name.
I love nicknames.
Yeah, I do too.
And there's a fellow who had a nickname, Prince Hal Newhouser,
Yeah,
on page 162.
I photographed him very, very early in my photographic career of ball players.
Yeah. Now, Billy Martin here on page 165, a little snarl on his lip. You didn't have to talk him into that, probably.
Yeah, I wanted that. Yeah, yeah.
We got Al Kaline and Norm Cash and Rocky Colavito.
There's
so many names.
There's Ted, and the first picture I ever took of him, I had to wait 3 days to get.
172, page 172, that picture. That was the 3 days waiting?
Yeah, but again, if you'll study his smile and his teeth and actually analyze his appearance, one hell of a good-looking guy. And look at his
Yeah,
teeth.
man's man.
Yeah, and look, his eyes are smiling. A lot of
Yeah.
people smile, but their eyes don't.
Yeah.
That he told me a number of times that's one of his top favorites pictures. So I made a huge blow up and sent it to him.
Really?
Yeah, years ago.
Yeah, that's genuine. That smile that's real. Here he is as the manager. Oops, looks like that. Whoever I bought that book from has got choppy again, chopped off part of his picture. So I'll hold him up here. Here's his brief stint as manager. Now this happens often where a great ball player isn't always able to get the players to play up to the level that they expect. So it's tough sometimes for managers who are great to. And that's one thing about Frank Robinson. He's been successful.
Yeah, oh yeah, very. And in a very quiet way. He's a very quiet, soft-spoken fellow.
No, definitely. And there's the old professor, page 178.
I'll never forget when I.
No, again, we don't have that one.
Oh my God, they took a lot out of
Yeah, I didn't go through that book too close. I should have. I'll have to complain.
And I see this is really in close. It wasn't that I blew that up. I got in right on top of him for that. Yeah, and he didn't mind.
Looking right up right in his eyes.
Yeah.
There's Joe DiMaggio now.
Now we have.
He was a bashful fella.
Yeah, I'll tell you something about that picture. Is that in the book that we're doing, called "They Smile for My Camera," the very last picture in the book is that picture with him not smiling. And then I tell about how there was one subject I couldn't get a smile
He wouldn't smile.
But I don't criticize him. I said if I'd had to smile all the years with all his damn photographers for so many years of playing, I wouldn't smile either. Words to that effect. And, it isn't criticizing him at all. In other words, I
But
don't blame him for not smiling.
But you were trying to get
He
him to smile.
smiled. I tried to, yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, but he'd smiled enough,
Uh-huh.
I guess, and so he didn't smile.
Now this picture here of Mantle from the behind has got to be one of the best known photos of Mantle.
Right, and they screwed it up. If you look in the Mantle book, they left enough of the body action. I mean, you see the great look of thing. They cropped that in
Cropped
so
him.
tight, they ruined it. But I didn't complain to the art director.
Yeah, because you can see the bat and everything in the real
yeah.
photo. Yeah.
It was shot to be seen more.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah. And you got several pages here of Mantle, and Whitey Ford, and the picture of the Roger Maris on page 194. This here, those bats, tell us about those bats being suspended.
Yeah, they're suspended with a polyethylene fishing leader. So it's transparent, and its weight, I don't know how it was, maybe 6 pound or 8 pound, and you can't see it like you would with thin wire or thread.
I think in the Mantle book, you show it. You show the wire.
Yeah, a little bit. Yeah, it was all fishing leader.
Now, what would we suspended from? What was it
I
holding it up?
had 2 things with a crossbar. Took about an hour to put that all up.
I
You
can
know
imagine.
that they took that idea and used it with the new guy, a Yankees player. What the hell is his name? He's the
Giambi?
big. Yeah.
Really?
They did the same thing. I know the guy that on the New York Times, and they called me and he said, Ozzie, we'd like to use that idea. And I said, sure. What did you do? I told him how to do it. So they used it, but then they used 2 of my pictures out of the book and said that it was my idea, which was pretty nice.
Yes.
All those years later.
Rather than
Yeah.
claim credit for it, because you
Yeah.
can't copyright an idea like
That's
that.
right. That's right.
You know. And great picture of Mantle and Maris together. And now what we found out is that they had a good friendship.
Yes. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. He's very supportive because Maris was going through a hell of a lot. He was being treated pretty rough.
Yeah.
And it showed too. I remember when I photographed him later on, I could see how much more worn and tired he was. You know, it's really taken a toll on him.
Now you've got Yogi Berra scratching his head. Now that's
Yeah. Yeah.
make it look like he's thinking here. Is that the idea?
Well, yeah, you know, guy will take his hat off and scratch his head.
Well, there's just so many, and then it gets in beyond. And it's,
She's skiing barefoot there.
you got somebody.
See how she's barefoot?
Water skiing
Yeah,
barefoot. Yeah,
you've gotta
page
really go.
262.
You have to go like holy hell to keep up with nothing but the surface of your feet holding you up. You know, you imagine how fast you have to go.
And she's still smiling though.
Oh yeah, she's. You know, the Cypress Gardens, you know, is closed after all the years. Just closed in Florida.
Huh.
Too much competition down there with Disneyland and all that. Those are some of the sport shots I did. See, there's Rocky.
Rocky Graziano on page 261. He's a colorful character.
Yeah.
And so many of these, and this book is just full of them. So it's not just baseball. There's Jack Nicklaus and Jack Twyman and Oscar Robertson and Bob Cousy, Rocky Marciano, page 241.
Yeah, there's a whole story in black and white of his family. You know, I think it's in there. See, there he is. Eating with his family.
Yeah,
And here he is
just beautiful.
playing cards
Yeah.
in church. That's his kid brother.
Undefeated, 49-0.
Yeah,
Undefeated heavyweight champion.
and only one of the few.
Yeah, and Floyd Patterson, who I really admired as a person, as a fighter.
Yeah,
He
he didn't
was
look
a gentleman.
like it. If you saw him on the street, you'd never guess. He didn't have the look, the size, or anything. But when he first lost the title, then he was one of the few that lost it and got it back.
And then Umar
When he first
Johansson, yeah.
lost, when he lost at that time, nobody could get near him. No press, nobody. It was so emotionally disturbing to him that he just cut himself off from everybody.
And he got rooked. A few years later, when Cassius Clay was stripped of his title, they had a round robin thing, and he got rooked. I forget who the fighter was he was fighting, but
Yeah.
I watched that fight, and he won it. And Howard Cosell was narrating, and he said, it's terrible, but the judges awarded it to the other guy. I'm not sure what happened there.
Yeah,
Joe Louis, you got to meet Joe Louis.
oh, a couple of times, yeah. Yeah.
So Paul Hornung, Jim Brown.
Yeah. Photographed Jim Brown. Photographed him right. It was the fall, you know, when they trained football, and that summer had his first role in a movie, and it was a starring role, supporting role, but he was still one of the stars in a Western, and that was the start of his movie career. You know, he did some pretty fine acting in a lot of
Yeah.
his roles. He
Yeah.
was talented.
Yeah,
Then he went and got himself in some kind of trouble with a young girl or something. I don't have the details, but it did his career a lot of harm.
yeah. Yep, a lot of these athletes are their own worst enemies. Now, I'm going to get into some more of these magazines here very quickly, and some of the books you put out, because we're closing in on 2 hours that we've tied you up here, and that tape's going to run out. But when you told me that, when I called you back there in '98, and you told me you were busy doing antique cars, I said, gee, I get a calendar every year from Paquette's Insurance with these beautiful antique cars. And I said, I wonder who that talk. Wouldn't it be great if it was Ozzie Sweet? And sure enough, there it was. This is
Hanger type.
what year this is? This is 2000. No, that's his phone number. 2000. 1998.
98.
Yeah. And there's a calendar of these
Oh, yeah.
the antique cars, album of antique cars.
Yep.
And so I've got about 3 years of these that I wish, if I'd known earlier, that I would have
Yeah,
been saving them for years.
It's a six-seater, isn't it? Yeah,
Six,
seater.
yeah, six,
Six-seater, yeah.
2 months per,
Yeah, that's the one.
yeah.
That goes back. Boy, that's heavy. Let me just see. Yeah, isn't that the fellow that owns that car owns that house? Isn't that some house and car?
Yeah.
And this girl modeled for us so much. She's just beautiful. Oh, here she is again. And this car is also owned by that guy. And, when we did this one in the snow. That's a handsome car, isn't it?
Yeah.
Beautiful. They do, what a great job of reproduction, too.
Oh, yes. Yeah, you'll have to see that Lozier when you come up. It's just tremendous. And so you go to car shows.
Yeah.
Do you do much of this anymore with the cars?
Oh, yeah. I got them all in that thing.
Okay. Yeah, you got a picture of
Yeah,
so
they're all the ones for next year.
now you must have
We'll do the truck and tractor, too.
now you must have a bunch of them that you've taken that you can pull out and say, well, I need the next one for a calendar. I can't
No, it's all assignment.
all assign.
Yeah, but of course I get the rights revert back to me.
Right.
They just buy calendar rights for 1 year, sometimes 2 years. But no, the rights, in fact, we're doing, one of the books we're doing is a big book on, and it's all cars that I photographed back. See, for years, I photographed cars new for the manufacturers. Like say a Gullwing Mercedes. I was photographing Mercedes then, and now I'm photographing Gullwing Mercedes for the classic car calendars. See, all those years later. And
If you live long enough,
yeah, that's
you can do
right.
that, right?
Right, that's it. Yeah.
Now, just okay. This just wanted to had a no. Let's see. Johnny Padra's story cover photo. Erdlatz. Okay, this was a cover photo. I got this one off eBay because it had a cover photo by Ozzie Sweet, and inside was a story of Johnny Padres. So I had two reasons
Oh,
to.
yes.
Did you ever take a picture of Johnny Padres?
I'm sure I have, yeah.
Now,
You know that the book Legends of the Field, Larry Kennelly keeps track of those things, and you know that's been for sale on the net, and you know what you said how'd you got it? We got it for $7 or whatever it is.
Legends of the Field?
Yeah, Legends of the
No,
Field.
I think I paid 15, 17, but I
Yeah,
bought it quick. Sometimes they go quick, and
Yeah.
sometimes.
and he said that they're listed now for $200. They've gotten so. I wish I had a couple hundred of them, but
Because it's out of print right now, right?
yeah, it's out
Yeah,
of print.
yeah. Here's another photo, and it's in that book,
Yeah,
Jack
yeah.
Twyman and Oscar Robertson.
Oscar Robertson, yeah.
But here's a year ago, I was busy putting out a book on the history of Champlain.
Oh, uh-huh.
And
oh, yes.
the guy doing the printing is Jim Rochester at the Border Press.
Uh-huh.
So I was chatting with him and talking about photos and such, and he said back a lot of years ago, it turns out it was a March '53 issue that it turned out in, that a guy named Ozzie Sweet came up here and took some pictures of my family and a few other guys out shooting pickerel, I guess it was, yeah, pickerel.
Oh, bow hunting, fishing, bow fishing.
No, shooting on rifles, with rifles.
Oh, rifles, yeah,
Yeah.
right. Yep,
in Lake Champlain.
yep, that's right.
And I said, hey, I know Ozzie
My
Sweet.
God.
He says, you
What
do?
date is that? That is.
This is March of '53 is when it came out. It's
Yeah.
March 1953, True Magazine.
Yeah.
And-
That was the number one men's magazine.
Oh, yes. Yeah, this was before Playboy got... but there's that... I don't know if Judy can zoom in, but that fish that you see flying in the water is actually being thrown. The guy is shooting into the water, and at Ozzie's signal, they throw the fish,
Yeah,
and that's posed.
looks pretty real, doesn't it?
Yeah. So I called you up, and you allowed me to, because it was local people in it, and it was in a national magazine, you allowed me to use a couple of the reprints out of here in the book. So we have this picture here of the
Good.
of them in the tree,
Yeah,
and his silhouette here with the bow.
yeah.
It's Charlie Duffy with his bow.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm not sure. I think Jim Rochester identifies the two guys in the tree, so they're in the book.
Yeah.
And Jim was also telling me, he says the funniest thing is, he says we got that picture, and here's a picture of his father, Jim's father, picking a fish out of the lake. He says years later, he says on Gunsport, he said I can't find my copy of it anymore. Gunsport. There's a whole story on that all over again. So I searched on eBay because Jim couldn't find his copy, and since then he bought this copy off eBay. Then he ended up finding his copy, so he's got two copies now. But there's that same picture on the cover of Gunsport.
I'll be darned.
6 years later, this was May of 1959.
Yeah.
So there's a story there on the same thing, rifle fishing is called.
Yeah, there was a fellow who was the gun editor and he was highly respected. He was the gun editor of Truth. His name was Lucian Carey. And I was just a kid practically then. I guess in my 20s, or early 30s. Anyway, I was very young. And they used to team us up, and he was in his 70s then. But he was highly respected. For instance, whenever he was the gun editor, whenever there was a review, a new gun or anything, he never let the manufacturer give him one. You know, he didn't want to obligate himself. In other words, if they give him one, you know, he wanted to report honestly about that gun. And that's why it was highly respected.
Plus, if they gave him one, it'd be the best one that they've already tested.
Well, yeah. Well, that and the fact that he wasn't in a position, if it was a gift, to do anything but report honestly. But anyway, they teamed us up a lot. There was this old man and this young fellow, but we got along real well, and I enjoyed the guy. But you know how he'd start off every day? And we'd have to stay in the same motel sometimes, you know, and a couple of times we'd have, one of the first times the place was full and we had to, you know, twin beds and all, but we had to stay in the same room usually. We'd have our own room. Well, I woke up and there was Lucius sitting on the edge of the bed, and he had the regular water glass, you know, that comes in the bathrooms of those places, and it was about half full. I thought he was having a little iced tea. It was straight whiskey. He was straight.
That's how he started his day?
The day. And I said, "You having a little iced tea?" And he said, "No, Ozzie." He said, "This is a little stronger than iced tea." Told me what it was. But then he didn't drink, you know, and have a cocktail before lunch, or drink in the evening, you know, and it wasn't alcoholic, but somehow he had to get his machinery going, you know. He had to belt himself with a shot of whiskey.
That's usually the way to slow down your machinery, not to...
I know it. He was a wonderful guy.
Wow.
And he used to stay at the Algonquin all week and then just go home. Oh, yeah. You know the story about Arthur Godfrey?
Oh, this is... You've made some friends over the years,
Well-
and this was certainly one here, wasn't it?
Oh, it was. Well, you see, one of my last assignments My gosh, I remember that shot.
There's-
That was a great one for having people scratch their head, get the hand up in there. But one of my last assignments for Newsweek as a staffer was I went to Virginia, Leesburg, Virginia, and did a cover of Godfrey. And it was the first time he'd ever been on a cover. He was, that was before his TV shows started. He was just a big hit on on television. And the radio editor, that was before television. That's the shot. Those are shots of mine too.
Yeah.
That was before television. And the radio editor of the magazine said, "This is Ozzie's last job for us, doing this cover." And he perked up his ears at that. And you know that for 4 years, he wouldn't let anybody else go. He was hot as a firecracker then, He's all of that's on his place.
He had a place on Thousand Islands too, didn't he?
Yeah, but Leesburg, Virginia was his ranch. Yeah, he had his own little airstrip there. You know how he flew his own plane. Rickenbacker gave him a DC-3,
Oh, really?
Oh, yeah, because he plugged it. He used to call it, the airline, he'd call it Rickenbacker's outfit, free. Plugging it all the time. So Rickenbacker just gave him a DC-3. He gutted it all out and turned it into a private plane, took all the seats out, and I flew all the way to San Francisco with him, and then we went by airline on to Hawaii because I shot the movie footage that he used on his TV show on the Hawaii thing.
Wow.
And he said, when I was out there, and he said, "Ozzie, you shoot movies, don't you?" That's the way he put it. And I said, "Sure, I never shot a inch."
I do
said,
now.
Yeah, I said, "Yeah, I do." So then my uncle had in Stanford, had a retail camera shop, and he loaned me cameras, and there was a fellow he knew, and I took classes, and I practiced like crazy. So when I went, I was ready to shoot, 16 millimeter.
It's like the old thing the actors say, can you ride a horse? Yep.
Yeah.
Whether you've ever been on one or not.
Yeah, that's right.
Now, Sports Illustrated put out a magazine back 91, Sports Illustrated Classic, and I think you've got probably 12, 15 pages in there. You got a shot of that, Judy?
And do you know what that did?
What that did?
Yeah, that kicked off that book.
That's
book.
really? That's what caused Legends of the Field? Because I see a lot of these pictures are in there.
Yeah, that's right. Legends of the Field never would have happened if they hadn't done that special feature. Lead pictures, big lead edges, just like it used to be on the Sport.
Uh-huh.
Yeah.
Well, there's Ozzie with his, there's a camera with about 8 flashes on it. Now, that's
Oh,
not,
yeah, I designed that. Yeah.
Did you actually
Yeah.
use that?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, really?
Oh, that was before strobe. Oh,
that would,
those were flash bulbs.
They'd
Oh, yeah.
alternate? They'd go off one after the other? Is that how it worked?
No, all at once.
All at once?
It was, you know what it was? An explosion of light. And that way I could shoot action, real action. Oh, yeah, that I designed that and had a guy make it, and everything's only one of its kind. Of course, after strobe, I have all strobe equipment now. As soon as that was outdated. But that made action pictures possible that weren't possible before I did it with that much light. Those were large flash bulbs.
Yeah, those weren't
great,
little.
and they're blue, for color.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's the best way to describe it. It was an explosion of light. Blind you.
Now, over the years, you put out, was it mainly with this Jack Denton Scott that you put out this series? All
Yeah. We did 18 of them together.
18 of these books, and you find these on eBay on a regular basis. How's that? Okay, this one here is, what we got here? This is geese. And there's another one here on buffalo, and another one with turtles, and you name it.
18 of them.
You've done a bunch of them.
Well, the thing is that Scott, it was a team effort. Scott, if you had ever had time to read them, They were beautifully written. They're for young readers. And we just developed into a great team. If you look on the back, they won after the first few, they just won every damned award. And the books would say in the back, they've done it again, in other words. But it was a terrific team effort.
Now, you would, that's speculation there. You would go in to these areas.
All contract.
All contract.
All
So
contract, yeah.
Oh, so it wasn't a book that you had to publish and sell to the publishers. It was
Oh, no, they were all contract, yeah.
Oh, that
Yeah.
takes a. No, we haven't got time here. We've got almost 2 hours. In fact, we have how much time on there right now, Judy? 1:55. An hour 55 of tape for this one sitting here.
Well,
So we haven't got time to get into this, but
doesn't seem that long, does it?
it doesn't to
Well, are we
me.
going to have time to go to the Gulls, do you think? or
I
not?
think we're going to go to the goals, but
Yeah,
what we'll
I
do
think
is.
it'd be nice to have that action.